Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Shout out to SOBC and Little Rock in the house. Who else is in the house? Who else is in the house? I think I see Full Circle Essentials. Greetings, greetings, good day. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. And today we are going to continue our conversation on leverage. Yes, I said continue because in our last episode, which you should go check out, okay, you should go check out, be found here on this very channel. We started the conversation about leverage. And how did we get there? How did we get to this point about talking about conversation about leverage? Well, that's because about 2 episodes ago, we were talking about objections, weren't we? We were talking about rejections because in human interactions, there are a series of negotiations. Offers get made, offers get rejected, objections get laid out, and so on and so forth. So we talked about how to get over that. And then it naturally arises that using leverage is a key way to navigate this space of negotiations, to navigate this space of persuasion, influencing, so on and so forth. And just a quick recap on what we talked about last time. We started out with your office analogy, right? And apparently you're making it a point to make more office references. That's a good thing. It's a good thing. So you start out with the office reference. There was a particular episode where there was an auction going on, and you use that as an emphasis or you use that to emphasize the need to find specifically what each individual wants so that you can get what you want. Now, for any transaction to take place, any exchange to take place, there needs to be exchange of value, right? Basic stuff here, nothing complicated. I'm selling these pens for $20. And if you're going to buy the pen for $20, it means that you find this pen more valuable than the $20 in your pocket or in your bank account or in your credit card, whatever it may be. You find this pen more valuable than $20, and I find your $20 more valuable than the pen. And then the exchange happens. So you use the example where this character went around finding what each individual wants because these different values are relative. You find it more valuable, the $20, the pen, than the $20 because you don't know how the pen was made. You don't understand the whole supply chain of how to get pens, right? So you're like, hey, I'll pay you $20. You figured it out. For me, it's probably worth like $5 because I got the whole machinery, so on and so forth, right? And then we talked about how to start from zero. Perhaps a student of yours, Dr. Thunder, comes to you and says, well, I know I know that having leverage is key for getting what I want in life, but how do I start from zero? I have nothing. Then we talked about things that you do have, such as being conscientious, having integrity, being a good worker. And I talked about how important it is and how people don't understand how important these particular skills are because they're very rare in the lowest rungs. Taking the first step on the rung, or let's say the job market, right? Those skills, such as conscientious, being a good worker, being indispensable, are super key. So get a job, become indispensable. Use indispensability to leverage your way for a higher salary. Get that money, use the money to leverage on and on and on and on. And I think the last thing that we touched upon was about, I think we talked about reputation. And you talked about your social media presence being, I think your exact words were, it's an extension of your leverage machine, right? So that
Yes.
people can say, hey, this Dr. Thunder person is not just some, he should be taken seriously. He's out there, he's putting his face out there. And you talk about performance being a key aspect of what you do and how you you share your performances in various social media platforms, and you also show that you're doing other things, quote unquote, in the community, and how controlling your narrative is a key way of getting leverage. So that's just a quick background of Live the Land of the past 2 conversations. But I'm going to just kick the
Yeah.
ball over to you for you to start, okay? Like, what next? What else? What did you have in mind? Or any kind of commentary or expansion upon what we talked about before vis-a-vis this topic of leverage?
Yeah, I mean, leverage is, if it's not the most important thing, it's it's close to the most important thing. One thing, uh, my father worked in state government, and he lasted through, and he had a high ranking position in state government, not an elected position, one of the actual skill positions.
Mhm.
Um, and he lasted through a few regime changes, several
Mhm.
regime changes. And if you're able to do that, then it means that you're able to do something that none of the opposing parties cronies are capable of doing. So that says something about the value that he had.
Hmm.
Um, and he would he frequently, and even to this day, we have these conversations, and the more I'm in academia, the more kind of politics and stuff that I have to deal with. Um, we have more of these kind of conversations. And one thing that we talk about frequently is leverage. We talk about it all the time, you know. And I think the way he says it is, white folks are not going to do right because it's the right thing.
Mhm.
it's a
Mhm.
it's a frame like that.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and that's I have found it to be true about people in general, that people are not going to tend to just do the right thing because it's the right thing, just out of the goodness of their heart, just because they believe that you're worth it because you are worthy. That's just not the way that things work. And often is the case that people that maybe aren't as worthy get promoted because they have
Mhm.
leverage. Now,
Hmm.
I think it's a
So
not a
people might want to do the right thing, right? But just to put a little nuance on that point, they might actually want to do the right thing, but the frame around them, right? It's like I
right.
I have to show up in this. Well, if I do this thing, then how am I going to explain it to the board of whatever, or the country club of this, that, the other, or in other words, whatever the frame and the system of selective pressures, social pressures they tend to be, might prevent people from wanting to do the right thing until you force them to do it through leverage. But anyways, go ahead.
Let's shout out a blind guy, his wife, and their life, and the big $20 super chat. Please leverage your presence with the like button. Yes, the algorithm now shows the host who clicked. No, the algorithm doesn't, but it does tell the algorithm to tell others that this info is worthy of a listen. Yes. And I think that is a reference to a Cynthia G comment or arguing point
is that is that
from
is that is that the latest?
Jessica X. Yeah, from a Jessica X live stream I was just checking out. Because Kevin Samuels is he stole Cynthia G's talking points,
Apparently,
and
right?
he's using her talking points to get rich. That's it's the most ridiculous. People are just reaching. Anyhow, uh, thank you very much, sir. But people don't do the right thing because it's the right thing, and they could want to do the right thing, as you were saying, I. But the frame, as you said, just the way that things are, who their boss is, other interests that they have to serve, may put them in a situation where they choose something else. And so you have to be in a constant state of creating leverage for yourself, visibility. One thing that I frequently talk about, and actually, I couldn't find the post. I wanted to find it. Maybe I will during the stream. But I made a post. This was years ago, and the tenor of the post was that you need to frequently change your associations
Mm.
because you want to constantly remind people of your value. You
Mhm.
want people to know that you know people, and
Mhm.
that you have opportunities. that
Mm-hmm.
they're not the only game in town. You want
Mm-hmm.
that to be known. And since it's not the kind of thing that you can just tell people, hey, I'm valuable, you know, if you do that, then it's going to make you seem less valuable. So you have to show them by, uh, by, uh, through the relationships and the other opportunities that you have. And it's a game that sometimes I don't want to play, but it is it is the game though, and that's what it is.
That is 100% key. I mean, so you're talking about getting that leverage and banking it, and you gave one way, right? Because again, this is about getting ish done, and we try to give practical advice, right? You said change your associations, right? Replay, or shall we say, rekindle certain other associations. Now you got to go around and say, okay, whom have I not contacted recently? What are they doing
Mm,
lately? You go to your LinkedIn, you go to certain places like that. It may even be within your family, right? Certain people that you know. I mean, maybe your uncle is the CEO of Lehman Brothers. Who knows, right? But you haven't talked to these people recently. Just give a shout out, associate, and then it might be, hey, fly over to Ohio next week, blah, blah, blah. And then in that meeting in Ohio, you may meet certain people. And the reason you're doing this is not just because of the opportunity, but so to show the other people in your life that you actually have value. You mentioned that you don't like doing this because we call it, let's say the dirty word, we call it politics, right? But as Aristotle correctly pointed out, man is the political animal. And that is what is exemplified by that statement that I made earlier, that people may want to do the right thing, but the politics, the frame surrounding the situation may prevent them. It may be apocryphal, but I think it was attributed to Lyndon Johnson that he told Martin Luther King that, yes, I want to pass this bill or whatever, but I want you to go out there and make me do it. In other words, you got to go create the circumstances such that you got to time me. You got to, you get what I'm saying, right? You got to go
yeah.
out there, cause the agitation, create the frame such that I have to do this because this is, after all, politics. In that case, it is pure politics. It's not just the politics of your everyday life, right? So, with regards to this gaining of leverage, the storing of leverage, the banking of leverage, so on and so forth, there is something that I want to say. Some other statement that was attributed to Martin Luther King, perhaps apocryphal again, but it said that he said that power is like money in the bank. The less you use it, the more you have. Let me say that again. Power is like money in the bank. The less you use it, the more you have. And of course, conversely, it means that the more that you use your power, the less you have. Okay. There seems to be, and this is something that we kind of intuitively kind of grasp, even before we start to unpack it. And that's, I want us to unpack that statement. But we seem to notice that there is a certain aspect of power that has the law of diminishing returns.
Mm,
So power is like money in the bank. You have that power in the bank, and you swipe your card, you use the power, you play your hand, right? And you get a bang for your buck. You continue to swipe that card, continue to go to that well, continue to play that hand, and you start to diminish the power you actually have. Hence, the truth must be the case also that in order to actually gather power, you have to, in certain ways, watch that you're not using it or overusing it. Or, in other words, it's almost like you were saying, like, have all these people around you, showing leverage and so on and so, but you don't go around using it. Therefore, it's still there. But once you use it, you start spending it, it diminishes, and there's a law of diminishing returns associated. But what are your thoughts regarding that statement? Power is like money in the bank. The less you use, the more you have.
yeah, the old folks talk about chits, you know,
Mm,
and
mm-hmm,
you don't want to use up all your chits, or how many chits, you know, and chits are like poker chips, right?
mm-hmm,
So it's like it's all about when do you bet, when do you go all in, or when do you only use a little bit, and it is like that. It is like money. Um, you spend it all and you have nothing, right? And then now you got to wait a long time until you can save it back up again. Um, and it seems almost like it's not intuitively obvious um, what that is, because I think most folks, and this is it's one of the reasons why poor people, folks that never had anything,
Mm-hmm.
always broke, if they hit the lotto,
Mm-hmm.
often is the case that they'll end back in the same situation or worse,
Mm-hmm.
because they don't understand the principle that you've gathered all of this, power, all of this, respect, all of this, and keeping with the analogy here, you've gathered all this money, you've collected all this money, but you can't spend it because once you do that, then you're back where you were. And so it's not intuitively obvious how that works, but it seems to me that a lot of it is I don't want to say it's the optics exactly, but some of it is optics. It's like, what does it look like is happening? And then you can leverage that, you know, for something else, but you can never spend it.
Mm-hmm.
At
Mm-hmm.
least you can't spend it all. So yeah, no,
100.
I totally agree. You know, this reminds me of, um, it reminds me of Proverbs. So this is Proverbs 17, 27 to 28. Not apocryphal. Uh, or pseudepigraphia.
Oh my
It's
God, this is good
another.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Um, he that hath knowledge spareth his words, and a man of understanding is of an excellent spirit. Even a fool, when he holds his peace, is counted wise, and he that shuts his lips is esteemed a man of understanding.
Ah, was it Mark Twain? And I'm paraphrasing now. It says, "Better to be silent and thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt." Right. So it's like you might think I'm stupid, but you
Yeah.
don't have any proof because I didn't say
Right,
anything.
right.
So, okay, I think this point now we're beginning to unpack this point about power. I'm going to touch on this Proverbs, this speaking
Here,
thing here.
here, let
Go
me
ahead.
shout out
Oh
Bijou
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Noir. Thank you for the big $25 or 24.99. Yes, yes, super chat.
Yes,
Uh,
she
thank you
has a
very
channel,
much.
by the
Thank you very
way,
much.
ladies and gentlemen. Go ahead and just type in Bijou Noir. She has a channel. Sister Gina puts out some good content out there about all kinds of things having to do with the. I'm not gonna try to label it, but let's say diaspora, Pan African, all kinds of things spreading from the politics of it, the sociology of it, the economics of it, and so on and so forth. International relations, all that kind of stuff. Go out and check her channel. Very, very much appreciated there for your $25. Yes, now she's I think blind guy, his wife, their life started with a 20. She leveled it, she ratcheted it up. She's like, oh, she
That's
has
right.
more leverage now in the game, right? Um,
Here,
so
and I'm going to give you this other camera view. This bonus. There you go.
there you go, there you go. Bam! Look at that! Look at that! It is quite true that people tend to trust those whom speak the least, right? And this is something that I tell people I tell introverts this all the time. They say, I don't, I don't know how to do the leverage game, the influence game, the persuasion game, the sales game, call it whatever you want to call it. Something that's absolutely important, again, for human interactions, which tend to be a series of negotiations. And that's why just these technical skills, being a technocrat, being someone who can push numbers and so on and so forth is one thing, but people who can move people is where the money really is. That's why the CEOs, generally speaking, are salespeople. That's why politicians wield power, so on and so forth. That's why the generals can influence. It's all about influence, leverage, that kind of a thing. And they say, I don't speak, I don't really talk much. And I'm like, you have to understand that if you're in that side of the ledger, the introvert side of the ledger, and you tend not to talk much, you have one advantage already, which is people tend to trust you more. You sit in that meeting. Now, you do have to speak at some point, but you sit in that meeting and you don't say much. Everybody can imagine this, right? The guy just sitting in there, obviously he has all the ducks in a row. You know, in other words, you know your stuff. You're not dressed like a bum, and on and on and on. And you don't say much. But when you open your mouth and you say something, people just naturally tend to, just like the verses from Proverbs you just read, right? It says, even a fool, right, when he holds his peace, is almost thought to be wise. Yeah. So people naturally will then think or hold, you have more leverage simply by not spending it, simply by not going out there and slapping every back, saying every word, laughing the loudest, always trying to joke. In this, yeah, go ahead. Seems like you have something to say.
What was it? I can't remember his name now. I'll think of it later, and somebody in the chat will probably remember. What is it? Frank. Uh, he's the gangster, the notorious gangster, the black gangster. Denzel Washington played him in the movie. I can't think of his name right now. Um,
Well, oh, it's not. It's definitely not Frank White, right? Because Frank White is the. Well, never mind.
no. Yeah, somebody probably knows this. Somebody will probably. You have a smart audience. Um, uh, but he would always say that the loudest one is the weakest one.
Mm-hmm.
And what he was talking about, he was not just talking about people being loud and in the middle of everything and it wasn't just that. He was talking about that too, but he was talking about um like when you get some money, you got to get the flashiest car, you got to get all the rings, you got to have a gold chain, you got to have a you know chinchilla coat, and you got to all of that bling in and out, all of that stuff. He used to always say the loudest one is the weakest one. The
Mm-hmm.
loudest one is the weakest one. But that's really what we're talking about. I am frequently in meetings, more meetings than I care to be in, but that's what it is. And one thing that you should know is the more success you have, and the more you move up in in whatever the institution that you're moving up in, whatever your
Mm-hmm.
discipline is, you're going to find yourself in more and more meetings. And so, really understanding how to navigate. I remember when I was young and I was full of ideas and energy, and too often I spoke too early. I spoke too soon. I shouldn't have said anything, right? I should have waited. I should have just, it is frequent these days that I'll go through an entire meeting and I haven't said anything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now I'm not talking about meetings that I'm leading. Obviously, if you're leading a meeting,
Mm-hmm.
you have to say something. All right. But even with that, I try to be very reserved, right? But in meetings that are not my meetings, I frequently do not say anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so
100.
then when I do say something, and now it can't be some stuff out the side of my neck, it needs to be some well conceived stuff. But when I do say something, now it has a certain kind of gravitas and weight to it, you know? And there's some practical wisdom in there too. And that is all of that time that I was not saying anything, I'm listening.
Exactly.
I'm paying attention. I'm getting the law of the
Mm-hmm.
land. I'm the lay of the land. I'm trying to see now who's going to say what, and
And you're
I'm
trying to see
trying to
if the point
find.
perhaps that you're thinking of that you're trying to make might be said or understood by others and see if they say it or not. and then you pick the most salient point that was not said, that cuts through everything that you've heard, and boom, you come like this
Yes.
big sword and slice everything out. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Yes. And it puts you in a position to provide the balance, right? So if you're hearing things on different sides of an issue, and you can perceive that if you could say something that's in the middle, that will seem to be, you know, it's kind of the pragmatic option because it's kind of, you know, it's taking advantage of all of the good stuff,
Hmm.
on it's on different sides of the issue, and then people are going to tend to agree with that, and they're going to tend to want to come together with that, because if they don't, then they're going to have to give up everything,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So at least this way I get a little bit of the stuff. So then you look like a hero.
100%. Shout out, shout out, shout out to practitioner in the house. Always nice to see you in the house. It's been a minute since I saw you in the live stream, but thank you, thank you, thank you very much for the super chat. She just dropped the money and didn't say
Thank
anything.
you, thank you, thank
Very,
you.
very apropos, if you will, and relevant to what we're saying here. She's holding her word. She's storing her power. So we're unpacking this statement that power is like money in the bank. The less you use it, the more you have. And this is something that may be counterintuitive, but you pulled out a verse from Proverbs and you read it where it says it quite clearly. Mark Twain has a version of this as well. And then we're just using the whole speaking aspect of leverage. Someone asked something about speaking, being an orator. I think 100%. If I understand your question correctly, checking for you, you mentioned, if, I don't think I can find it now again. I may have lost it. But you mentioned basically, is being an orator as an individual an important part of leverage, right? Now, that is I mean that cannot be overemphasized. In other words, being able to communicate, um, communication, conversation is the basic way of, let me use the word manipulation. Okay, it is the basic way of moving each other, right? That's why they say politics is violence by or war by other means, right? So your regular conversation, if you don't want to carry a stick and push people around, right, then the beginning is the conversation aspect. But when you say orator, I assume that you're talking about the ability to for public speaking, those kinds of things. I have a series on public speaking. I just also made another a small episode with 5 tips for speaking publicly. 100% key, right?
Yeah,
Very, very, very important.
you all should go and check that out. That was a masterful presentation. Very, very, very good material. Some really practical stuff that you can do to improve your speaking. You really should go check that out.
Yes, yes, yes. Checking for you. If you have not seen that, then go out there and look it up. Now, another way in which this particular phenomena, the phenomenon of reserving your power by not using it, is you may find that people come to confide in you the less you give them your opinion. In other words, I find this all the time. Now, it just so goes naturally with my kind of introvert personality that maybe it's not just the introvert thing. I tend to just watch from afar. Like we have a group of friends, okay? For example, right? One of them is not doing exactly what they need to do, right? They're kind of a little shaky. Yeah, this guy is taking too long to finish that task, or he still hasn't gotten this from whatever it is, particular way that they're effing up, right? You have certain
Mm.
people in the group that'll call them out more, maybe openly, or give unsolicited advice, right? And they'll say what they think. In other words, everybody in the group knows, but somebody will come out and more forwardly say, yeah, you know what, Dan, you need to, how come this, that, and this? Or start telling you know what, Dan, what you should do is this, that, and the other. I have this contact. You should go to this tax attorney. That'll solve your problem. You should go to this divorce attorney. That'll help, whatever it may be, right? And I tend to be the one that just doesn't say anything. I just relax. I keep my mouth shut. What tends to happen, and let me get a 1 in the chat if you guys know this situation. What tends to happen is Dan comes to me. he pours He tells me the whole situation. And I am able to give him my judgment and have way more influence over Dan than everybody that has been given Dan unsolicited advice. This happens to me
Yeah.
over and over and over again, right? I keep my mouth shut. I just relate with Dan like I'm not noticing the fact that he's messing up on whatever, right? And I just leave it alone. Dan, of his own free will, always happens at some point. We're chilling somewhere and he's like, he just starts telling me. And then I tell him, this is what you do. And he takes it. And I become way more influential. I have way more leverage simply because of the fact that I did not use it. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, you have to wait. You have to wait until people are ready to hear from you. And this is another one of those things where, as a young man, uh, I think my tendency was to try to start conversations.
Mm,
Start a conversation that was going to lead to some sort of contention. I think that was my tendency. That's not what I do at all anymore. Now
mhm,
I just sit around and wait for people to come to me.
mhm,
You know, and then when they do come to me, you came to me.
mhm,
So I now I can tell you what I actually think. Now, you got to be, you have to play some politics and be subtle with the way that you do it. Um, but you know, it is the case that when someone comes to you, I mean, now they're totally open, and you really can say what you need to say. Say
mhm.
what's actually going to help them.
Yes, you can actually be the way I say it. I say, don't be judgmental in terms of the unsolicited advice aspect of things. But when people come to you, you can give them your judgments, and your judgments can be firm, black and white, clear cut, the way it is, because they came to you. But don't
Mm,
don't show judgmentalism out there or just regularly. Just do your thing. People will come to
right.
you, and you can then tell them what it is. And this is a in organizations, it's not just in your personal relationship. In organizations, this happens as well. That guy that's always quiet in the meetings and so on and so forth, behind the scenes, they tend to have a lot of the power because people will go to them and say, "Hey, let's go find out what Dr. Thunder thinks about this." I
Yep.
know, because Dr. Thunder is not out there, giving me a lashing in public in the meeting about, the things I'm doing wrong. But anyways, you get the point. You want to give our friend Aizen Sama
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Aizen Sama, late to the stream, but here to support. I enjoy the duo of Ike and Dr. Thunder. Always great content with you two gentlemen. Thank you, sir. Very much appreciated.
100%. And I think we got Snuggles also in the house. Let me go ahead and put that up on screen.
All
Shout out to
right, my
Snuggles.
man. Let's go.
I, it's been uncovered in the YouTube streets that Snuggles is indeed a lady. Uh, according to the Bernard Riley put a pack of private investigators together or something and uncovered Snuggles' personality. That Snuggles is a woman, and Snuggles neither confirms nor denies like that is his or her way to not say anything about who they are.
We need to find a way uh, where more people to listen to the information you both are disseminating without needing conflict to be part of the conflo. Yeah, well, the trick. Okay, so this is and this is the reason why it's not necessarily the easiest thing to hold your tongue, to bite your tongue, to not speak, you know, is that what we think is that we're going to miss out on an opportunity, or that the opportunity that we think we can create ourselves won't ever manifest again. And the fact is you might be right. It may be true. See, it may be true that you won't have that opportunity again. It may be true that whoever's in the room at the time won't get an opportunity to hear you speak, or
Mm-hmm.
that you won't be able to make the certain kind of impression that you've wanted to. But it might still be the right decision to not speak. And that
Mm-hmm.
is tough. That is tough, but it also is wise.
Yeah, and to the point about supporting and spreading the word, there are two aspects. There's the side of the audience, obviously, which I'm always appreciative of. No matter the number that comes to watch, I'm always appreciative of that number. And what the audience can do, obviously, is share the content, right?
That's right.
Continue to like, share, subscribe, and so on and so forth. That is a key
Yeah.
aspect. But I'm not. I'm not gonna do that thing that certain people tend to do. Like, the true artists, the one who say, I'm just gonna. my stuff is not for everybody. It's not for the masses. It's like, no, I think that's silly. I'm in the real world. I'm here to do real
Facts.
things. I'm here to spread out as far and wide as possible. So there is a side which I understand that the onus is on me. Number one, to remain consistent, and then number two, to break down the information in a way that can be that's easily that's palatable. Again, without putting the conflict. Because one way to do it is to do conflict. You remember we remember the thumbnails. I think it was like 2 years ago when you had the thumbnails with the people with the laser coming out of their eyes. Ben Shapiro destroys, whatever, So you can
Right,
use
right.
conflict to try to bring people in. But another way is to break. And if you notice, for example, let me let you guys in on the back. I've been doing that whole 5 ways to improve public speaking, 5 rules of the growth mindset. In other words, breaking things down in a more palatable, easy, bite-sized way, rather than what I used to do in the past, which is have 5 hour long theological conversations, about everything, cutting across history, anthropology, psychology, philosophy. Let's see. So I'm trying to break things down to that level as well, and there are other practical things that I could do. So your support definitely is welcome. Shout out to Snuggles one more time, and shout out to Wallace in the house. Shout out to L Boyd in the house. Now, again, we're talking about leverage, and we're talking about this term here, or this particular quote that says, "Power is like money in the bank. The less you use, the more you have it." Conversely, the more you use, right, which is what I'm trying to say, the more you use, let me correct myself, the less that you have. The more you spend the money, the less you have. The less you
Yeah.
use it, the more you store it up. So you want to store it up. Okay, so basically we're saying don't overstay your welcome. Don't overplay your hand. Don't be given
Yeah.
unsolicited advice. It does not actually get the end that you want to get. This is something that extroverts struggle with. I always try to give these personality differences because different people have different advantages, right? Extroverts tend to struggle with not giving unsolicited advice. Tend to struggle with
Mm.
not storing up that powerful speech, or that powerful word that they're going to say waiting till the end of the meeting, as you talked about before, in order to give it. However, extroverts have certain advantages in this. So with prospecting, if we just zoom in to the sales aspect of things, with prospecting, with keeping people on the top of the funnel, keeping people around, extroverts are great because they'll go talk to the client or the prospect about their daughter's soccer game, and they actually care. Okay. They actually care about the person's daughter's soccer game, and they want to talk to the person about, oh yeah, did you see this other thing? And oh that new Mastros down in Redondo Beach. I don't really like the new Mastros. Don't you notice how they, or whatever, and they actually care. An introvert, we don't really care, right? So different advantages, right? So the extroverts are great prospectors. They're great at the top of the funnel. The introverts are the snipers, like you said in that meeting, right? Me, for
Mhm.
example, I'm always pushing that for people to go out there and learn persuasion, learn oratory, go join Toastmasters. It is a skill in your talent stack that makes you quite valuable. I am a closer. I know that because it naturally fell that way on before I learned that, oh, because I'm an introvert, that's why I'm a closer, because I snipe and I do the technical thing. I'm not going to be taking people out to 10,000 lunches and talking. That's not my thing. But when it comes down to it, I'm going to come in and I'm going to be the one that closes. The extrovert salesperson goes and gathers these prospects, narrows it down for me, and I come in and I kill. So introverts out there, make sure that you do that. So basically, speak softly and carry a big stick, right? That's another one. So before we move on from this particular topic here of and you may have something else to add, but I don't know if you know Glenn Lowry, but he is a professor at Brown University, an economist.
Oh yeah, I love Glenn Lowry.
Glenn Lowry, he has a regular show
That's
with
my man.
John McWhorter. Yes, Glenn
Yes.
Lowry is definitely the man. The reason he came to mind because you mentioned chits, which are like chips, and he was talking about this reparations conversation, and he was saying if you play that hand, right, say, hey, white man or whomever, pay me this, right? You have to understand, well, what's your next, what's going to come next, right? What have you removed from the table now? What is
That's
this
right.
the framing that you're now saying? What are you going to say next? Because guess what? The other person on the other side of the table is going to say. What they think is like, if I give you this,
That's
I
right.
don't want to hear
That's
anything
that's what I'm talking about. Yep.
anymore, right? So it is something
Facts.
to think about when one thinks about leverage, okay? It's not just a question about right versus wrong. People need to understand this. It's not a question about, well, this is right and it is my right and it should, but you have to think about, I think in the military says, the enemy has a vote, right? You don't just go plan out your war games as though the Taliban doesn't have a say. Like, no, they get a say. They get to react. The landscape, the social sphere, the political sphere, that table has a say. So when you play certain hands, you need to think 3 steps ahead. What have I just done? What can I now do in the future? What is the way I've kind of laid? So, anyways, any thoughts about either that in particular, or before we close out this whole aspect of speak softly, carry a big stick, don't overstay your welcome, don't open your mouth and then be thought a fool, so on and so forth. Your thing about money is like, power is like money in the bank. The less you use, the more you have. Any thoughts about that?
I think we can go on to the next thing. I think you had
Okay.
something you wanted to talk uh, about being judgmental.
Oh yeah. The judgmental thing is people will come and confide in you if you are not judgmental, right?
Right.
So you need judgments. Giving people your judgments is a way to influence them because uh, it literally you're helping them, right? But if you actually give unsolicited judgments, which we tend to
Mm.
call judgmental, there's a difference. Okay, so here's one thing. And by the way, I mean say some psychological thing again. According to the model, I'm INTJ, which means introvert, intuitive, thinker, judger. Means I'm a judger. People tend to think I'm judgmental because of that. Maybe I'm more of a risk of becoming judgmental. A judger tends to like have kind of final statements about things. Like, we look, we see, da, 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 okay, go, boom, now you're in this category. I've judged you, I've put you over here. Doesn't mean that I'm going to now be a mean person to you. The opposite of judger is what they call a prospector. A prospector, the file is always open for a prospector, right? That's how these people are always like, how about if I try this? How about if I told her this way? How about if I tried it? For me, it's more like, okay, it's done. That was it. This is it. In other words, my whole movement is to come to a final conclusion. Prospectors tend
Right.
not to. The point here that I'm trying to make, though, is that there is a difference between having judgments, being a judger, and being judgmental. And if you are judgmental, it is like spending that money. Okay. It is like
Right.
throwing that power out there, and you actually don't have any effect. If you hold on to your judgments, because people actually value a lot someone with good judgment, right? I have conclusions for just about everything. I have a little box that I watch and I have a conclusion, but I don't say anything until the person comes to me. Okay, and it's related to that whole point there that people will
Right.
trust you if you don't go about judging them. Then they come to me, then I give them my judgments. It's happened to me very recently. It was a lady, an engineer associated with my company. She works for another company, but sometimes we do contracting business together. And she came to me about her relationship stuff. Okay, now amongst the friends that she has, and she's an engineer, so she has some guy friends and more men and so on and so forth. Amongst the friends that she has, there are some people whom go out of their way to say, you know what you should do. Let's just call her. Let's just call her. I don't know. For some reason, I can't come up with any female names. Let's call her Jane. You know what you should do, Jane? You need to do this, 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 and this. You know what men like, Jane? They like this, and this. I'm the guy that I just keep my mouth shut all the time. But it doesn't take a genius to know that Ike has judgments about everything. Right? Like it's like even if I'm not telling you what to do in your life, that I have an idea about something, and I have categories, judgments, that kind of a thing. So one time, okay, about a couple of months ago, I was in Southern California. I was like, hey, invited over. We finished a big project together. Let's have some dinner. Let's talk, right? And she came out with all the the issues, right? And I was like,
Mm.
okay, Jane, this is what you do. Here is where you're messing up. This is what men actually think when you do that. Blah 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 blah. And she soaked it all up. In the other cases, she pushes back on when people say that, like, I don't talk to that guy anymore. He told me this, and I was more harsh with what I actually said, but she
Right.
was more willing to take it because I
Yeah.
did
That's
not
that's
go out there
that's how it
unsolicited.
works. That's how it works. You know, so a couple things. One, Frank Lucas. Frank Lucas is the guy that the quote is from, and the actual quote is the loudest one in the room is the weakest one in the room.
Mm,
Um, and it's interesting because um, if you watch the movie, um, he accepts a gift from his wife, and his wife gets him this, what is it, like a chinchilla coat or something. And I do have a red cup. That is true. Um, and uh, he took the coat. He accepted the coat, and then he went to a boxing match, and it was the reason why the feds were able to figure out who he was, because they didn't know who he was prior to that. And um, and then when he knew that it was the coat that tipped him off, he burnt the coat. He burned it, and then he never again dressed like that. So it wasn't even him that was buying stuff that was opulent. He just accepted something from his wife. You know, I don't know. There might be a lesson in there too, but
mhm.
that's an interesting thing. But on the judgment thing, and this is interesting. I think there needs to be a distinction made. Um, it is a common mistake that people make, or misunderstanding. It's like they don't understand what the words that are being used actually mean. So when, like in the Bible, like so for instance, there's all this, you shouldn't judge. I don't judge anybody, why are you judging me? There's all of this and negative sort of connotations to judgment. Okay. Now, what's meant when it says don't judge, or judge by the same measure that you're judged, or you will be judged by the same measure that you're judged, rather. Um, what's meant there is, you know, it's the same kind of idea, removing the mote from your own eye before you, so that you can see to,
Ye
remove
without
the,
sin cast the first stone.
yeah, it's this. But what it's not saying is, just act like nothing is
Everything goes.
happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's not saying anything goes. And a matter of fact, Jesus instructs us to judge a tree by its fruit, right?
He cursed that tree,
So,
didn't he?
so he tells us to judge a tree by its fruit. Now let's look at if you consider the Pharisees, and this is interesting too because the Pharisees are always seen in a negative connotation. Like if you say Pharisee, that's like a
Mm-hmm.
that you're putting someone down.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about some of the good qualities of the Pharisees.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the Pharisees were well studied. They were fervent. They followed all of the principles of the law. They did
Mm-hmm.
all of the stuff that they were supposed to be doing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But the one way that they failed was that they were judging other folks in an unfair manner, right? So it's like this hypocrisy thing, right? But it's a clever hypocrisy. It's not just overt hypocrisy. So so the problem with the Pharisees is not that they were too pious or too orthodox, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem with the Pharisees is that they were picking things that they would naturally excel at to be the standard.
Mm-hmm. Like, yeah,
They
yep.
they could then judge others based on those standards and seem to be superior. Be pious, be orthodox, uphold traditions, but also judge fairly. A 7 foot tall person is not made to look impressive by berating a 5 foot tall player for not being able to slam dunk.
Mm-hmm. Um, it is a parable, right? The two people praying, one talking about, "Oh, I'm so great. I'm not like that man over there."
Yeah,
Yeah, you know that one. Yeah.
right.
So just to reiterate what you're saying, that whole judge not for, you'll be judged in accordance with the way you judge and so on and so forth. Remove from your eye, he without sin. It's simply saying judge yourself first. That's all it's saying. It doesn't say don't
Right.
judge. It says judge, 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 judge. But judge yourself first. Okay?
That's right.
It'll completely change your perspective. It is one thing that I saw this tangent here, and I just have to mention something, and because it affects many aspects of life. The thing you do first, in other words, some people say, let's say someone say, well, yes, I'll judge myself, but I want to judge that person first before I judge myself, that kind of a thing. Or let's take another dichotomy, a more simple one. Maybe you have social responsibility and you have personal responsibility. Okay,
Mm.
we all know that generally speaking, those things exist. And yes, if we're all reasonable people, we say, yes, there is a social responsibility that I have. And yes, I do also have a personal responsibility. But you know what all the difference in the world is? All the difference in the world is what you do first, right? The difference
Mm,
between the people who argue and kill each other about politically, let's say, because that you can draw a line, a dichotomy politically between those who tend to say focus on individual responsibility first. Let's say the Jordan Peterson type, clean up your room first, right?
mm,
Because that changes everything, right? People, there's something about human beings whereby it's not just a question of, oh, it's balance. It's like, no, because we tend to look at the scale. Let's say you look at that scale, right? That balance scale. You're like, I'm going to put the rock, a stone on individual responsibility first, and then I'm going to balance it out with social responsibility. Okay. But I'm still balanced, right? But somebody else says, no, I'm going to put it on social responsibility first, and then I'm going to balance it with individual responsibility. The life of these two people, the choices they make, their psychology and so on and so forth, completely different even if they come to the same balance point. But the person who decides that, first of all, I'm going to clean my room, the cleaning of your room itself will completely change the lens with which you look at the world. The
mm.
taking care of your family first before you go out to the community to tell the community what's wrong with them will completely change your view of the world. The taking out of the beam from your eye, to use the Jesus story, before you start looking for specks in other people's eye, will, in this case, will literally change you the view of your view of the world, right? So
Facts.
I wanted to just mention that little dichotomy there. But I think that what you're saying about judgment is something that is absolutely key. I don't know how are we doing on time because I just Yeah, man.
We're about an hour in. We got
About
some
an hour.
time.
Okay, we got some time. Okay, good. Now, there is something else when it comes to leverage because, again, we're giving practical pointers on leverage. We started on the last stream to talk about this because we were talking about the world of rejection and objections. Human interactions are a series of negotiations and so on and so forth. And in talking about objections, rejections, and how one deals with them, we got to the point where we're like, you know what? Leverage is a key aspect of this thing. Leverage is very important. Get it, use it. We talked about different kinds of leverage in the last stream. And today we're getting into some of the more subtle psychological aspects of it, right? So we talked about that whole don't use it, right? Because the reason why it's counterintuitive, by the way, is because most things in life tend to be use it or lose it, right? You need to use your muscles, use your brain, use your immune system. Otherwise, they atrophy. But it tends to, but in this case of power and leverage, it tends to be the case that you don't want to use it. All right. You want to be
Yeah.
very selective with it in order to actually store it. So we're telling you how practically to store up leverage and how to build it. And it's simply by dialing yourself back in these different examples which we gave, such as in being quote unquote judgmental publicly and in an unsolicited manner, right? That does not give you influence over the person. The person is not going to come to you and ask for your advice.
No.
In not speaking, not just speaking out of turn or not thinking you need to speak just because you're in a meeting. That's not going to give gravity to your words. Just if you're speaking all the time. So these are actually practical things here. Now, there's another thing, which is respect, right? People respecting you is a key aspect of actually being influential to them. Now, you can use the external markers of respectability, right? You can play the politics of respectability, as some people tend to call it. Like you could live in the right neighborhood and wear a suit and do whatever it is, and these are the markers of someone that say, okay, this person is respectable, so I respect them. But also, there is the actual slow building of respectability, such that you all you now have to do is say two words when other people have been saying 10,000 words to try to get this person to listen, right? All you do is now just say two words. And because you have built respect, and this may have been your point the whole time. So you may have a friend and he's doing something that you're like, this guy is doing this silly thing again. Why is he doing this? He plays too much, right? And he's a new friend of yours, a new acquaintance. Don't say anything until that person respects you, right?
Yeah.
How do they're gonna respect you because of your conscience. Let's just call it certain virtues that you have, certain virtues that are relevant towards the pursuit of certain values, right? You're conscientious, you are industrious, you are hardworking. You say you do what you say what you do, so on and so forth. You build all this up with them, right? When you know that they respect you, boom, you then tell them, look, that thing that you do with bop 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 bop, perhaps you shouldn't be doing that, and they will take it all, right? What was the difference? You told them the same thing that you would have told them in the beginning, but in the beginning you did not have respect, you know? And it's not about the truth. Again, it's not about the truth or the rightness of what you're saying. It's about the
Facts.
frame. It's about the anyways. So what do you have to do, or what do you have to say with regards to
Yeah. So
this respect thing?
yeah. So I think. Oh, okay. So this is a common problem for simps. Remember my frame for simps. Uh, Remember my claim is that Adam, as in Adam and Eve,
Mm-hmm.
Adam. You know what? We're going to watch this. We're going to watch this. We're going to go 5D on this. Um, Adam, as in Adam and Eve, Adam was the first simp. Adam was the first simp. Okay. Now consider what he did. Okay. Now there's all kinds of things that you can take from the story of Adam and Eve. One thing is you can see that God prioritizes purpose for a man over relationship. Okay? He put him on earth. He gave him a job. He did all of this stuff. He saw that he was doing a good job. He already had a purpose. He wasn't wafting around, didn't know what he was going to do. No, he knew what he was supposed to do, and God said, "Okay, it's not good for you to be alone. We're gonna make a woman for you." All right. Now, the snake appears in the garden. I'm fast forwarding. Snake appears. He's talking to Eve. He's saying, "Hey, I know you're not supposed to eat, but hey, but why can't you eat? What you'll be like God is. Knowing good and evil, right?" So this is fine. Uh, I guess it's all right to have the conversation. But she grabs an apple. Well, we always say that it's an apple. We don't know what it was actually, but she grabs an apple or a pomegranate or whatever. I always imagine that it was an apple or pomegranate because I actually like those fruits. Um, and she eats it. She brings it over to Adam. Say, "Hey, why don't you deal with this too?" And just like a simp, he says, "All right, I'll do whatever you want." He grabs it and he allows her to convince him to eat it. He knew he wasn't supposed to do it, but he does it anyway. All right. So then, as soon as they did that, they knew that they were naked. Okay. And so then they're hiding in the bushes and stuff. And God's like, "What's going on? Why are you hiding in the bushes?" Of course, he already knows. So he says, "It was the woman you gave me. She tricked me." Right. So he doesn't even take responsibility for his part in it.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, it seems to me that it was him blaming the woman, him simping. It was not just simping for the woman, but it was not being willing to take responsibility for it,
Mm-hmm.
for his part in it. I
And
think that
blaming
was
God.
the unforgivable sin, I think. I think that was the thing that was unforgivable. Because I think if he said, "You know what? I'm going to take this right on the chin. This was my fault, and I shouldn't have allowed her to convince me, using those feminine wiles and everything against me. I shouldn't allow that. I shouldn't have got weak for that." Right? That's what should have happened. But
Mm-hmm.
so Adam is the first simp. And so all of us, especially men, all of us men, we have that tendency. We have that tendency. That's like it's that's it's like our first nature. It's part of our initial programming.
Mm-hmm.
So blue pill beta simps think that women are all trustworthy, loyal, and worthy of respect. They are not. This is dangerous because if you trust or respect the wrong woman, it can absolutely destroy your life.
Mm-hmm.
And the same mistake will cause you to fall in a professional setting also, right? So if you take that as a sort of analogy for the way that you must conduct business, you trust is not something that is just granted. Respect is not something that is just granted. You must wait to see what people are going to do. And then when people show you who they are, you have to believe it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Don't do the thing where, "Hey, but um but she's a woman and so women are all, sugar and spice and everything nice. So maybe my instinct that they're not trustworthy, maybe that's what's wrong here." No, that's not what's wrong. What's wrong is you should have trusted your instinct.
Mm-hmm.
And so much the more when big dollars are involved or the potential of uh, being promoted on your job and you don't know. Every scenario on your job, every scenario is a scenario that can either keep you where you are or promote you. And so you have to know who you can trust. And you can't just trust everybody and you can't just respect everybody. Now, because of the gravity of this whole thing, if you can show yourself to be trustworthy, dependable, loyal, right? And if you can show yourself to be respectable because you've made good decisions over a long period of time, then your word is going to carry a lot of weight.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so the sugar, spice, and everything nice aspect of what you said, I think is 100% key. And I just want to put a flag or put a pin on that point here, which is I did a stream, for example, called, I think it was called Female Vices and Male Sins. In other words, I wanted to make it clear, okay? The reason why there's this confusion, I think there's certain practical reasons. It is the case that male sins are more visible. In other words, they'll rob you. In other words, violence, let's say, more visible. Okay. And then it tends, people just then, because, most people are stupid, right? That's just the case. No shade or, no shade or judgment. But,
I'm judging you. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm judging.
people ain't
And
that
you are
bright.
too, because you told me that's your tendency. So I know you are
Oh
too.
yeah, I'm a judger. I'm a judger. I'm a judger. I'm not a prospector. I know what's up, and you're not gonna shake me off of it. Most people are stupid, so they see this violence, and then they're like, oh, those are bad things, right? The things that they don't tend to see, though, they just ignore. In other words, emotional violence, psychological violence, relationship type of mean girl stuff, let's say, right? Which, by the way, tends to be harder to get over than somebody punching you in the fifth grade. Okay.
Yeah,
But
it's why that saying, "Sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt you." It's exactly opposite of that. You will repair much faster, much quicker over broken bones than you will over words if they're delivered
mhm.
in a certain manner.
Yes. So I think that this simpery that goes on out there, this sugar spice and everything nice that goes on out there, that kind of stupid blind trusting of women, just thinking, oh, they don't do anything about it. I think that some of the, and there are many layers to it. I made a whole stream about it. Go watch that stream. It's called, Female Vices and Male Sins. I was juxtaposing the two and based on their characteristics. If you have upper body strength, you're going to use it. If you don't have upper body strength, you still got to do something, right? So what are you going to do?
Yeah,
You're going to
that's right.
use social manipulation, emotional manipulation, psychological. You're going to be shifting the goalposts. You're going to be doing all these things, which we
Facts.
know, right? And people tend to think, oh, well, why are they doing? Like, no, 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 no. Those things are harder to see. They're also harder to call out. They're harder to police as well. So a lot of that kind of violence gets done. Okay. And by the way, we just mentioned that it is actually real bad in the sense that you can get over, you may forget that someone punched you, 2 years ago. But there are
Right.
people still trying to get over some ish that their auntie told them or their mom told them 25 years ago, right? So I think that that point needs to be very, very well understood. Another thing, again, and just to push it a little further, people need to understand that emotional means selfish, right? The more emotional you are, emotions are all about me, 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 right?
No.
So the emotional side of the ledger, right? Let's not even call it men or women. Women tend to be more emotional. But if you want to do the whole statistical thing of the bell curve, yes, let's add the men on the far end of the bell curve too, the more feminine men, right? If you must, okay. But what I'm saying is, if you are emotional, okay, which you can then say writ large, women are more emotional. You are more selfish. And this goes out to the men and the women. Men know this, and then women too know this. Know that what you're doing when you think that even when you're protecting your own, right? That whole I protect my family stuff, it tends to be a very non-egalitarian protection that women tend to do. It tends to be this is my child and screw everybody else type of protection. It tends to be, well, this is my ends, my stuff. Social is as much about keeping people out as putting people in. So people would think, okay, well, the more social side of the species, that
Mhm.
means they're the nicer side. No, no, no. Social means out group as much as it means in group. As a matter of fact, it tends to be more of an out group thing. It tends to be about keeping everyone else out from my little thing. So, men, know this. Women too know this. Emotions are about, by definition, right? Emotions are selfish. Emotions are about you. Emotions tend not to be rational. Emotions tend not to give this kind of a numerical or quantitative, let's look out there. So, one thing is people tend to think that emotional and social people are more empathetic. No. I don't need to drag on the argument more, but no, you're not more empathetic because you're social emotional. You're just empathetic about your little concerns. And that's not even empathy. Empathy is a more, shall we say, objective looking at people and trying to, not just because you're your family, they're your blood, or they're tied to you, or because it's about your stuff. And it's an objective looking at somebody and trying to put yourself in their shoes. Emotions are the opposite of trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes. So, again, I think it is worth dispelling the whole sugar, spice, and everything nice kind of trope that is out there. And again, because people are stupid, they tend not to think in this kind of way. They think in one layer or only two layers. You talk about going 5 dimensions, right? 5 levels deep. In order to understand that human beings have chaos, both male and the female side. It is well understood what goes on the male side because it's more visible, right? It's like, oh, yeah, violence and all that kind of stuff. But what goes on in the female side, because it's more hidden, you just think, oh, nothing goes on over there. Well, you're sorely mistaken. And that hence comes the simping and the stupidity. I'll step off my
Yep.
soapbox now.
Well, I wanted to, you know, that was facts, you know. Uh, but I did want to punch something that you said a bit. So one of the things about the whole emotions being by definition selfish and self-centered, no one else can feel your emotions. Okay, so if you just consider it that way, since no one else can feel your emotions, you're the only one that's experiencing them. If you're the only one experiencing them, by definition, that is selfish. Okay? Um, oh, well, it's going to facilitate selfish behavior. Let's put it that way. Maybe having the feelings is not selfish,
Mm-hmm.
but expecting others to cater to you based on those feelings, that's selfish. Because they don't know what those feelings are, right? Um so that was one thing. And the other thing is, let's see here. When you um, part I think part of the issue that men and women have understanding each other is that because men tend to think rationally or logically, and women, though they can be rational and logical, um, will also think more emotionally, uh, then it's possible to offend those emotions without realizing it. And then there's this expectation for the conversation to cater to something that is invisible to one party. It can make it very challenging. And it's not an issue of a person doesn't care about the other person. It's not that at all. It's just they're just not experiencing what you're experiencing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean that's well, in the role of sort of uh statistics and studies and surveys and all of this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
the purpose of that is to try to create more objectivity so that rather than your position or your arguments being sort of uh, anecdotal and only based on your own experience, you can open that up to others' experiences. And that's what the survey is doing. It is telling you what other people are experiencing, right? And uh, but what I think also is the case is when you're talking to folks that are leaning more emotionally, when you try to reference those studies and that research, it's it's of no it doesn't do what you think it would do,
Hmm.
right? Um, yeah. So it's
Yeah.
a
What you think it'll do is perhaps two things. Number one, you think maybe it'll take the person out of their shoes, put themselves in the shoes of others, or that it may
right.
just kind of create some kind of statistical objective plane whereby they can look at likelihoods of outcomes and so on and so forth, and then make a decision. So in that frame. But what it tends to happen is people will then go and pick the exceptions. Like, no, 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 no. But I know this one woman
Oh yeah, right.
who fell off the Golden Bay, bridge and survived.
Well, either that or
Therefore,
they'll question the study. That's the strategy that it seems that most people use now.
mhm,
If the study is disproving something that they were assuming to be true, that assumption is so they need to hold on to that assumption so much that they will question. Well, you can make numbers say anything, and statistics will do anything like this. And now, if you consider who it is that you may be talking about or talking to that may understand some of this other research, they probably understand that statistics can be manipulated. And since they're aware of that, they're probably aware of not just one study, but several studies that tend to show the same thing. And that's actually when you would start to believe those statistics to be true. It's when it's the law. What is it? This law of falsifiability. It's like the scientific process. You have to have a method by which to falsify whatever it is that you're trying to prove, right?
mhm,
Because if you don't, then yes, the numbers can be manipulated and used to say anything. But that's why you do multiple studies. That's why you have it done from multiple angles. That's why you get a certain kind of cross section of different kinds of communities, in different age groups, and all of these other things. That's why they factor that in. They know that they can be manipulated, but uh, but it is not usually the case that these sort of statistical analyses, given the proper treatment, done the right way, reputably, with experts, folks that do this, it's not usual that those numbers are going to be able to be manipulated. You
mm,
know, but
mm.
that seems to be the strategy these days. Just say, well, I'll just numbers can be manipulated and blah blah blah. It's like
Okay, so we're talking about leverage. Let me go ahead and and since we're talking about studies, let me let me
yeah,
let me get controversial here for a second, which in case
sure,
surprise, um, people use certain numbers for leverage.
yeah,
For example, or so for example, I think in a recent some woman got killed recently in the streets of London,
mm,
and what came out was some politician and other simp politicians going on and on about how we okay who gets killed who gets killed more, would you think, in the streets, getting bodily violence or and up to death. Okay, need not it, by far it's men, right? So but this woman got killed, and then there was this whole outpouring of we must teach people to view women as human beings, to view women as other men. Do you it's like if they viewed women as men, they would be killing them more. It
yeah,
sound that was it
yeah.
was
That's
like
facts.
it's like it,
Facts.
it was ridiculous to me what these people were saying. And they stood up there in the parliament and they were talking seriously how we need to teach our boys to respect women and how they need to. It's like, it is the fact that most men want, because of the fact that most men want to protect women, that's why they're not getting killed as much as men by any stretch of the imagination, not even close. But people will just come out and they will just say these things based on these
Facts.
so called numbers. This woman got killed. Oh, let's now start talking about, and then you have the simps coming in, repeating.
Yeah.
Let's view women as men. If they view them as men, they will be killing them more. Is that what you want? Right? But let me say something else. Since we're talking about killing or some other aspect of, let's say, criminality and so on and so forth, let's bring back to the United States. Let's say you have the African American community. You have certain statistics, okay? You know, lots of white people also get killed by the cops, let's say, right? Um, Heavy policing is also, not that I'm justifying this, but if you look at the crime statistics, you're like, there is a lot of disproportionality, right? Disproportional amount of crimes getting committed by, let's just say, dark skinned people. That particular statistic, though, gets swept under the rug or get put under this whole massive thing of, oh, that too, and that is a problem of systemic racism. Systemic racism caused us to commit the crimes. And systemic racism is also causing the policing of those crimes. Therefore. So people want to use this particular kind of certain set of statistics as leverage, like, oh, well, we're all over prison statistics, let's say, or arrest, so on and so forth. But forget the crime side of the ledger. And as a matter of fact, it is my opinion that
Facts.
using that kind of leverage, okay, and I think some people know exactly what they're doing, right? They know that, you're more likely, this Mr. African American male is way more likely to be killed by some other African American male in the neighborhood than some white cop, right? But
Yeah.
let's not use that as leverage. Let's go ahead and use these other numbers. Are there any kind of long-term ramifications, negative ramifications, self-defeating aspects of cherry picking, and more than just cherry picking, just outright lying about stuff, ignoring stuff? Let's not address the fact that, in terms of the maximizing of human potential, we have a problem of maximizing human potential, where it's like, okay, these people are not reading at the level they need to be reading at. They're not achieving at the level they need to be achieving at. They're committing certain crimes at certain high levels. Let's forget all that. Let's just use this one little button here and, take advantage of white guilt and keep on pushing on that, using that leverage. Is that, because we're not just talking about whether it's right or wrong. We're talking about, is there a possible way in which that can become self-defeating at some point?
Oh yeah, definitely. So I think to your point earlier about reparations, um, it's like, like that Glenn Lowry was making. If you what's the next thing after the reparation checks gets in? What's the next thing going to be, right? So you have a problem with sort of riling folks up continuously, um, and so yeah, okay. So some of these studies are interesting. So the CDC collects all these numbers, and so we know that it is not the case that there is some sort of disproportionality about the killing of black men, unarmed black men, by the cops. We know that it's not disproportional based on the number of interactions with the police. Okay, we know that that's the case. Okay, now I would argue though that the cops definitely are uh, more physical
Mm-hmm.
with with black men. They're more physical, so there's more. I guess we would call this assault, by police, um, on black men than anybody else. So, and that's interesting because that provides a way to view that from both sides. Because I think both sides of the argument, in some ways, both sides are correct. So, the side that says, which tends to be the conservative side, hey, but look, less of them are being killed by the cops, less of them are unarmed of them, more percentage wise, more whites are killed unarmed whites are killed. This thing. So that's true, but what that misses out on is the nuance of, but there's still more brutality against blacks by police. So that's a problem. And so you need to figure out how to fix that problem. But this may be the first time, anyone that's listening right now, this may be the first time that someone has even said that you've even heard someone say what I just said, right? Now, that kind of nuance is important though, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's very important. If you don't have that nuance, you can't fully really understand what it is that you have. But the way that things are now is as soon as you say something that sounds like it's on the other guy's team, then people totally tune out and they just imagine all the worst things about you, including what your intentions must be. That you're an evil person
Yeah.
that has terrible intentions, and now that's the kind of judgment that we shouldn't be doing. You should not be judging
Yeah.
people's intentions. You don't know what they are.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
Um,
I
yeah.
I'm sorry. I know we're running short on time.
Yeah.
Um, and perhaps I wanted to just add one more aspect to this because we
Sure.
started out talking about we're talking about leverage. We peppered in the reparations talk, and then we peppered
Yes.
in the Adam being a simp and blaming God and the woman for doing what he did talk, and the whole sugar spice and everything nice. The misunderstanding of the different kinds of sins, right? The sins that are
Yeah.
on the social, emotional, psychological side are hidden. Hence, most people don't have the fine tuning to see it or not even understand that it is a sin or you know. And then now we're talking about this violence aspect, and we started with women, and then with the African Americans. And there is another thing which has to do with affirmative action, and we're talking about nuance. Nuance is what I'm saying here. In other words, the nuance of affirmative action that I want to say is this:
Let's go.
you cannot on the one hand, I cannot come to you, Dr. Thunder, say, hey, give me special considerations. Forget the
Mm.
reasons, right? They may be because again, what we're talking about when we talk about leverage here, when I try to I call it black pill, call it 5 dimension, you call it hovering above the issue. Remove right, wrong from it. We're talking about actually moving things in the world, right? Like a
Yeah.
chess game, a level in Mario Brothers. It's not about whether well that guy shouldn't be throwing the flame at me. It's like no, the flame is coming at you. What are you gonna do, right? So when you look at it from that level, I cannot come to you, Dr. Thunder, and say, give me special considerations, but don't look at me in a certain way. I want you to 100% respect me, 100% have
Man,
retained in your head my dignity, right? I want you to look
man.
at me as dignified, respectable, but I want you to also allow me to come in with lower grades.
Uh-oh.
How do you do that?
Oh
Hence,
no.
there's that whole thing about balance where it's like, okay, well, yes, human dignity is important, but also access to certain institutions and so on and so forth is also important. But where do you start? Where you start makes all the difference. Some of us, and
So
again, a lot of this is going to fall on a psychological kind of a preference. Some of us are like, no, 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 give me dignity or give me death. That kind of a thing where it's like, I don't, leave me, you look at me, Dr. Thunder, with respect. I don't want your crap. That kind of a thing, right? But
absolutely.
then, or you could say, Dr. Thunder, give me stuff, but I'm not gonna request that all you also look at me with dignity because it's almost impossible, right? People tend not to
Mm.
be able to want to understand the seesaw effect of life, like action and reaction, that consequences, or the Taliban has a vote, that kind of a thing. People always want to just black and white. If you're on this side now, now you're an evil criminal. It's like, anyways, what do you have to say about that?
Man, you need one of these for this. Yeah, we about to go in now. We taking the gloves off now. All right, let's go. Um, so, man, I think I need to go. I think I need to go 5D. This. All right, so several issues with the affirmative action thing. Okay. And again, this is one of these nuanced topics where the tendency is for the left to have a certain view of it and the right to have a certain view of it, neither of which are really considering all of the factors. Okay. Now, affirmative action was designed and created to solve a particular problem. Okay. And it was the black problem.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It was, look, these folks, we enslaved this group of folks. We want to do something to provide some sort of opportunity to help them to, you know, make up for, our foot being on their neck for this long. Okay? It was very specific what it was, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the numbers, again, this is statistics, these are numbers, stuff that's collected by organizations like the CDC. The folks that are most helped by affirmative action are white women.
Yeah. Oh,
Facts.
we brought in Karen too.
Now,
What else are we gonna bring?
yeah, that's right. Karen is getting all kind of assistance. Okay. Becky, Becky loves affirmative action. Okay. But black folks are not substantially being helped by affirmative action, not in the way that it was designed to do so. Now, here's my issue. Well, here's one of my issues. I got about 20 issues here, but well, I know we don't have time for 20 issues, but but here's one of my issues. Once once the research was in, once the numbers had been collected, say let's do it over a 10-year period of time. Let's reevaluate. Let's look at it and say, who is it actually helping? And when they looked at the numbers and it said that white women were the primary beneficiaries, and they said, you know what? We like this affirmative action thing. We're going to keep going with it. Okay? That tells you right away what the actual intent of affirmative action is. And notice that even with this Black Lives Matter stuff, notice that what they've done is they've leapfrogged over black men. And now they even have leapfrogged over black women. Now black women thought that I think they thought because the Democrats, they tend to cater to certain things that are more of assistance to black women than they are to black men. So
Mm-hmm.
we're going to tend to see things differently politically. All right. And that's a setup, by the way. But that's how it is. But they've leapfrogged over black people, period. And now we're talking about LGBTQ. We're talking this way. So that now the priority is on those things. When what supposedly started this out, Black Lives Matter, right? Um, what started this out was brutality against black men. But notice that we're at the bottom as far as even being served by a movement that supposedly was supposed to be serving us. Nah, see, it's okay. It's a straight okey doke. It's the same
Mm-hmm.
stuff over and over, right? And we keep falling for it. Now, so the affirmative action thing, once we knew that it was not serving black people, but that was primarily serving Becky, then why didn't they do anything to fix it? They didn't do anything to fix it because they were okay with the results. And that's facts. That's just facts. That's just the truth. Now, how about a person that doesn't need affirmative action? Okay, if I think about somebody like my dad, okay?
Mm.
My dad has an IQ of 160,
Nice.
okay? He actually belonged to Mensa for a period of
Mm.
time, okay? He was they were going to give him a full scholarship to go to Harvard for an MBA. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now he ended up couldn't do that because he had a family. My dad, when he took the entrance exam for getting a job for the uh, state government, he scored the highest score in the history of the state on that test. Okay. All right. But he was also considered an affirmative action hire. Okay. Affirmative action. All right. So they were checking their boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, every time he was promoted, uh, there was all of this, murmuring about, oh, the only reason that he was being promoted was because of affirmative action. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This guy, in a very, it, literally, this guy was the smartest guy in every meeting in the room all the time. He was the most capable. He was the baddest dude all the time. And he's getting promoted because of affirmative action, which we know now was not, they don't care that it doesn't serve black people, that it's serving Becky. So you're creating this quagmire. So what you're doing is you're setting up black men that are super capable, black people that are intelligent, capable, have all the credentials. You're setting them up to be considered less than even before they even work the first day on the job. And it ain't helping black folks really. It's helping white women.
Nice, nice, nice. I think that's a well, that's a good conundrum with which to close this out. That whole
Yeah.
aspect of dignity, again, people tend to, because the life is short, and there are few things more valuable than, let's say, human dignity when it comes to the realm of what makes us human, what makes life worth living. In other words, if I put you in a cage and I treat you like a pig, is that worth it for a human being, right? To paint an extreme picture. Hence, dignity tends to be more valuable in many cases than certain material conditions, let's call it, right?
Yeah.
Material conditions, right? So, getting into certain institutions and so on and so forth for people who were historically disadvantaged, is of key importance. However, you need to weigh that against human dignity, which is it's in that counterbalance there. You cannot, again, I cannot go to Dr. Thunder and ask him to give me something special, consideration, so on and so forth. Give me an allowance, allow me to get in with a lower grade, something like that. But at the same time, for him to look at me in this, it is unfair to Dr. Thunder, right? It is unfair to him to ask him to do both of that. And then you added the fact that in practical reality, it's actually not even having the effects, and there's all this okey doke stuff going on. But anyways, and this is apt, by the way. I don't know if you know, everyone noticed. You see what's on the tie?
Oh yeah, the lobster. That's right.
I ordered this from jordanpeterson.com or whatever it's I got a Jordan Peterson. There's also a face mask, okay, a lobster face mask. But the whole thing about postmodernist Marxism, right? I think is absolutely apt here to close us out. Which is that all these there's a surface level thing, of policy and politics and so on and so forth. But there are deeper things going on, known by people like Derrida and Foucault, and it's not like they were hiding what they were doing in terms of these thinkers, philosophers, and so on and so forth, that are really here to play some to change the whole landscape into a whole landscape of power games, right? And thereby, then it becomes this nexus of, what do they call it? Intersectionalities, right? Like, who's more oppressed than whom, and how do we da da da? No, you don't get to say, because you are okay. Today you're an oppressor. Maybe next week you'll be the oppressed. Or today we're not addressing your particular kind of oppression. You're actually the oppressor today. Black men are the white men of the black society, whatever it is, that kind of stuff. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you, Dr. Thunder, the last word. But today what we were talking about is leverage. Okay, we had two episodes on it. We started out simply talking about how to use leverage in the last episode, finding and giving people what it is they want, understanding that it is absolutely key. going from zero to level 100? How do you start gaining leverage and using it? Today, we got a little bit more on the psychological subtleties. We talked about the fact that leverage is like money in the bank. The less you use it, the more you have. And this is reflected in things such as, well, speak softly, carry a big stick. Don't talk too much. Don't be outwardly judgmental because your judgments then will not carry weight. And then we got into respect as well. And then we veered off into certain other subtle aspects in which people try to use leverage, but perhaps in a way that is counterproductive, such as, taking statistics. And then we managed to throw in Karen and Black Lives Matter and this and that, everything. We threw it all in there. We went in, and I'll give you the last word, Dr. Thunder. Shout out again to all the people who super chatted. Shout out to Practitioner, Bijou Noir. Check out Bijou Noir's channel. Practitioner also has a channel. Aizen Sama also has a channel. Shout out to all of them. And you have the last word, sir.
Yes, thank you for the support, everyone. Let's keep the conversation going. Um, um, I just wanted to say something that I didn't get a chance to say to finish this out. So, and this is related to not overstaying your welcome. Now, I mentioned earlier this thing about there's a Facebook post. I'm gonna dig that out and I'll post it on my community tab or something, so you can see the post I was talking about. But the post basically was just talking about how you want to always be asserting or showing rather what your value is. You show your value by the different sorts of associations that you have. And one of the mistakes that often is the case, and it's more likely that men will make this mistake, is that we'll just get comfortable with our surroundings. We just accept stuff for what it is. Hey, this problem is here. Hey, it's the devil, I'm good with it. I'm going to be all right. We also sometimes we take it as it's like a toughness test. It's like, can I take this? Yeah, I can handle this. I'm manning up, And so sometimes we will try to bulldoze stuff that we really should be a little more nuanced about. Leverage is one of those things that can help you to not have to brute strength stuff. And in particular, having, constantly developing your networks, things like applying for jobs, frequently, even if they're not jobs that you're necessarily going to take, getting yourself more experience with doing that, but then also, the scuttlebutt would be like, oh, such and such was a finalist for this job, or oh, they offered him this position, and it just makes people sort of get right, it makes them start doing the right things. People don't do the right thing. It's often that they don't do the right thing just because it's the right thing to do. They have to have other reasons to do it. And you have to help them to make those decisions by making yourself appear to be as valuable as you actually are. Now, the implication is that you actually are valuable. So, so that it already starts with that, so if that's not the case, then this presentation hasn't been for you. You need to get that stuff happening. You need to get that going right now. And I have a new series on my YouTube channel called Leveling Up with Dr. Thunder, and that might be a good place for you to start. But so I just wanted to say this: it's important to change your associations frequently. So if you consider Proverbs 25:25 as cold waters to a thirsty soul, so is good news from a far country. Now, understand what I mean by this. The information is not new information. It just seems like it's coming from somewhere else. And so it's naturally more valued. It's seen as exotic. Okay. Now, and often is the case, someone comes, a new person comes in and suggests the same ideas that you've been saying for the last 5 years, 10 years. And for some reason, they're able to get people to do it. It's because of this verse here. And also remember that even Jesus could not do many miracles in his hometown amongst people that knew him when he was growing up. They knew him too much. They knew him. Oh, wait a minute, isn't that just Joseph's kid? Oh, he ain't about nothing. You know, we know him. We already knew. And Jesus was God.
You
Okay.
want to get your kid to do certain things, right?
Mm,
Try to find a way for him to hear it from that neighbor guy that he likes or that
that's right.
uncle that he doesn't see every day because he sees you every day. It's like, oh, here goes dad again telling me to lace my shoe this way. Oh my God. Right? But when the neighbor is like, hey kid, why you lace? It's like, oh, like, yep, yep.
Yeah. So that is my final word. Thank you. Thanks for having me on your channel again, man. Been really enjoying myself and getting ish done.
Not a problem. We will be back here Thursday for another stream that is just on the regular Ike stuff. But 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, we do Getting Ish Done with Dr. Thunder. But I will be back with Chantel Simone. I believe you actually did an interview with her. And I also had an
I
interview on
did.
her channel. Yes, with Chantel Simone. And we're going to talk about the dynamics of nature versus freedom when it comes to the modern day relationship and
Yeah.
men versus women, natural roles versus equality and freedom, natural tendencies, proclivities versus the political ends and
Yeah.
the zeitgeist, if you will. You know, the zeitgeist
Mm.
says be this kind of a woman, but maybe your nature and your other things are pushing you in a certain other direction, and then
The
you
bag.
add traditionalism and so on and so forth onto that. There is
It's the bag. It's chasing the bag. It's making them do something different.
Hey, well, there you go, there you go, there you go. All these things are important, and we're going to look at it from a philosophical point of view. With there is nature on one hand, there is freedom on the other hand, there's equality on the other hand. You can't have it all. Okay, there is no freedom or equality in nature, and freedom is opposed to equality. For example, you can't say, "Well, everybody be free, but everybody be equal." It's like no. People are already born unequal and people will
That's right.
apply these skills unequally. So if you let them be free, there's going to be unequal outcomes. If you try to make things equal, then it's no longer natural. So that whole thing of I want nature and I want freedom and I want equality, well, no, you cannot have it all, ladies and gentlemen, in any sphere of life, least of which, or needless to say, in this particular sphere, which is human, the relationship between men and women to form that primary unit, which is the family, which is a first kind of model of relationships that children have and the kind of the building blocks of society. So it is a philosophical conversation that we're going to have on Thursday, ladies and gentlemen. And with that, we are out. And as I told L. Boyd, no music. Come on Thursday for some music. But thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you next time. Bye.